morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are in the world. Today's update is the second part to the ninth chapter, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the ninth chapter, titled Landing on Planet Earth by Zecharia Sitchin in his book, The 12th Planet. Last time we left off on page 261. Let's see if I can zoom in for everyone here. No one but the Nephilim traveling to Earth, past Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, could have considered Earth the seventh, even if, for the sake of argument, one assumed that the inhabitants of the ancient Mesopotamia, rather than travelers from space, had the knowledge or wisdom to count Earth's position not from the central sun, but from the solar system's edge. Then it would follow that the ancient peoples knew of the existence of Pluto and Neptune and Uranus. Since they could not have known of these outermost planets on their own, the information must, we conclude, have been imparted to them by the Nephilim. Whichever assumption is adopted as a starting point, the conclusion is the same. Only the Nephilim could have known that there are planets beyond Saturn, as as a consequence of which Earth, counting from the outside, is the seventh. Earth is not the only planet whose numerical position in the solar system was represented symbolically. Ample evidence shows that Venus was depicted as an eight-pointed star. Excuse me. Venus is the eighth planet following Earth when counted from the outside. The eight-pointed star also stood for the goddess Ishtar, whose planet was Venus in the figure 119 just below us. So the female deity down here is Ishtar. And what Sitchin is trying to imply here that these little circles right here are Venus. Many cylinder seals and other graphic relics depict Mars as the sixth planet. A cylinder seal shows the god associated with Mars, originally Nergal, then Nabu, seated on a throne under a six-pointed star as his symbol, in figure 120, just below. Other symbols on the seal show the sun, much in the same manner we would depict it today, the moon, and the cross, the symbol of the planet of crossing, the 12th planet. And here's the figure 120, and this is Mars, or Nergal, or Nabu, as Sitchin puts it. In Assyrian times, the celestial count of a god's planet was often indicated by the appropriate number of star symbols placed alongside the god's throne. Thus, a plaque depicting the god Ninurta placed four star symbols at his throne. His planet Saturn is indeed the fourth planet, as counted by the Nephilim. Similar depictions have been found for most of the other planets. Sorry, excuse me. The central religious event of ancient Mesopotamia. Excuse me, everyone. I had some fruit earlier. Had that cantaloupe coming back for me. The central religious event of ancient Mesopotamia, the 12-day New Year festival, was replete with symbolism that had to do with the orbit of the 12th planet, the makeup of the solar system, and the journey of the Nephilim to Earth. The best documented of these affirmations of the faith were the Babylonian New Year rituals, but evidence shows that the Babylonians only copied traditions going back to the beginning of Sumerian civilization. In Babylon, the festival followed a very strict and detailed ritual. Each portion, act, and prayer had a traditional reason and a specific meaning. The ceremony started on the first day of Nisan, then the first month of the year, coinciding with the spring equinox. For 11 days, the other gods with the celestial status joined Marduk in a prescribed order. On the 12th day, each of the other gods departed to his own abode, and Marduk was left alone in his splendor. The parallel to the appearance of Marduk within the planetary system, or his visit with the 11 other members of the solar system, and the separation of the 12th day, leaving the 12th god to go on as king of the gods, but in isolation from them, is obvious. The ceremonies of the New Year festival paralleled the course of the 12th planet. The, four, the first 4 days matching Marduk's passage by the first four planets Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn were days of preparation. At the end of the fourth day, the rituals called for marking the appearance of the planet Iku, or Jupiter, within sight of Marduk. The celestial Marduk was nearing the place of the celestial battle. Symbolically, the high priest began reciting the epic of creation, the tale of that celestial battle. The night passed without sleep. When the tale of the celestial battle had been recited, as the fifth day was breaking, the rituals called for the twelvefold proclamation of Marduk as the Lord, affirming that in the aftermath of the celestial battle, where there were now 12 members of the solar system. The recitations then named the 12 members of the solar system and the 12 constellations of the zodiac. Sometime during the fifth day, the god Nabu, or Marduk's son and heir, arrived by boat from his cult center, Borsippa, but he entered Babylon's temple compound only on the sixth day, for by then Nabu was a member of the Babylonian pantheon of 12, and the planet assigned to him was Mars, the sixth planet. The book of Genesis informs us that in 6 days the heaven and the earth and all their hosts were completed. The Babylonian rituals commemorating the celestial events that resulted in the creation of the asteroid belt and Earth were also completed in the first 6 days of Nisan. On the seventh day, the festival turned its attention to Earth. Though details of the rituals on the seventh day are scarce. Hope that's not too bad of a picture for everyone. H. Frankfurt in kingship and the gods, believes that they involved in enactment by the gods led by Nabu of the liberation of Marduk from his imprisonment in the mountains of Lower Earth. Since texts have been found that detail epic struggles between Marduk and other claimants to the rulership of Earth, we can surmise that the events of the seventh day were a reenactment of Marduk's struggle for supremacy on Earth, or the seventh, his initial defeats and his final victory and usurpation of the powers. On the eighth day of the New Year festival in Babylon, Marduk, victorious on earth, as he forged Enuma Elish, had made him in the heavens, received the supreme powers. Having bestowed them on Marduk, the gods, assisted by the king and populace, then embarked on the ninth day on a ritual procession that took Marduk from his house within the city's sacred precinct to the house of Akitu, somewhere outside the city. Marduk and the visiting 11 gods stayed there through the 11th day, and on the 12th day the gods dispersed to their various abodes, and the festival was over. Of the many aspects of the Babylonian festival that reveal its earlier Sumerian origins, one of the most significant was that which pertained to the house of Akitu. Several studies, such as the Babylonian Akitu Festival by S. A. Pallas, have established that this house was featured in religious ceremonies in Sumer as early as the 3rd millennium BC. The presence of the ceremony was a holy procession that saw the reigning god leave his abode or temple and go via several stations to a place well out of town. A special ship, a divine boat, was used for the purpose. Then the god, successful in whatever his mission was at the Akiti house, returned to the city's quay by the same divine boat and retraced his course back to the temple amid feasting and rejoicing by the king and populace. The Sumerian Akiti, from which the Babylonian Akitu derived, literally meant build on earth life. This, coupled with the various aspects of the mysterious journey, leads us to conclude that the procession symbolized the hazardous but successful voyage of the Nephilim from their abode to the seventh planet, Earth. I'm gonna take a quick break, y'all. My throat's getting dry. Excavations conducted over some 20 years on the site of ancient Babylon brilliantly correlated with Babylonian ritual texts enabled teams of scholars led by F. Wetzel and F. H. Weisbach in Das Hauptthematiktum des Marduks in Babylon, to reconstruct the holy precinct of Marduk, the architectural features of his ziggurat, and the processional way, portions of which were re-erected at the Museum of the Ancient Near East in East Berlin. The symbolic names of the seven stations and the epithet of Marduk at each station were given in both Akkadian and Sumerian. attesting both to the antiquity and to the Sumerian origins of the procession and its symbolism. The first station of Marduk, at which his epithet was ruler of the heavens, was named House of Holiness in Akkadian and House of Bright Waters in Sumerian. The god's epithet at the second station is illegible. The station itself was named Where the Field Separates. The partly mutilated name of the third station began with the words location, facing the planet, and it just goes empty, everyone. And the god's epithet there changed to the Lord of poured out fire. The fourth station was called Holy Place of Destinies, and Marduk was called Lord of the Storm of the Waters of On and Ki. The fifth station appeared less turbulent. It was named the Roadway, and Marduk assumed the title where the shepherd's word appears. Smoother sailing was also indicated at the sixth station called the Traveler's Ship, where Marduk's epithet changed to God of the marked out gateway. The seventh station was the Bit Akitu, or House of Building Life on Earth. There Marduk took the title God of the House of Resting. It is our contention that the seven stations in the procession of Marduk represented the space trip of the Nephilim from their planet to Earth, that the first station, the House of Bright Waters, represented the passage by Pluto, the second, where the field separates, was Neptune, the third is Uranus, the fourth, a place of celestial storms, which is Saturn, the fifth, where the roadway became clear, where the shepherd's word appears, was Jupiter, the sixth, where the journey switched to the traveler's ship, was Mars, and the seventh station was Earth, the end of the journey where Marduk provided the house of resting, or the god's house of building life on Earth. How did the Aeronautics and Space Administration of the Nephilim view the solar system in terms of the space flight to Earth? Logically and in fact, they viewed the system in two parts. The one zone of concern was a zone of flight, which embraced the space occupied by the seven planets extending from Pluto to Earth. The second group, beyond the zone of navigation, was made up of four celestial bodies: the Moon, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. In astronomy and divine genealogy, the two groups were considered separate. Genealogically, Sin, or as the Moon, was the head of the group of the four. Shamash, as the Sun, was his son, and Ishtar, Venus, was the daughter. Adad, as Mercury, was the uncle. Sin's brother, who always kept company with his nephew Shamash, and especially with his niece Ishtar. The seven, on the other hand, were lumped together in texts dealing with the affairs of both gods and men, and with celestial events. They were the seven who judge, seven emissaries of Anu, their king, and it was after them that the number seven was consecrated. There were seven olden cities. Cities had seven gates. Gates had seven bolts. Blessings called for 7 years of plenty. Curses for famines and plagues lasting 7 years. Divine weddings were celebrated by 7 days of lovemaking, and so on and on. During solemn ceremonies like those that accompanied the rare visits to Earth by Anu and his consort, the deities representing the seven planets were assigned certain positions and ceremonial robes, while the four were treated as a separate group. For example, the ancient rules of protocol stated the deities Adad, Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar shall be seated in the court until daybreak. In the skies, each group was supposed to stay in its own celestial zone, and the Sumerians assumed that there was a celestial bar keeping the two groups apart. In an important astro-mythological text, according to A. Jeremias in the Old Testament in the light of the ancient Near East, deals with some remarkable celestial event when the seven stormed in upon the celestial bar. In this upheaval, which apparently was an unusual alignment of the seven planets, they made allies of the hero Shamash, or the sun, and of the valiant Adad, or Mercury, meaning perhaps that all exerted a gravitational pull in a single direction. At the same time, Ishtar, seeking a glorious dwelling place with Anu, strove to become queen of heaven. Venus was somehow shifting its location to a more glorious dwelling place. The greatest effect was on Sin, the moon. The seven who feared not the laws, the light giver Sin, had violently besieged. According to this text, the appearance of the 12th planet saved the darkened moon and made it shine forth in the heavens once again. The four were located in a celestial zone the Sumerians termed Gerhea, or celestial waters where rockets are confused, Muhe, or confusion of spacecraft, or Uhe, band of confusion. These puzzling terms make sense once we realize that the Nephilim considered the heavens of the solar system in terms of their space travel. Excuse me. Only recently, the engineers of ComSat, which is Communication Satellite Corporation, discovered that the Sun and Moon tick satellites uh, and shut them off. Hmm. Earth's satellites could be confused by showers of particles from solar flares or by changes in the moon's reflection of infrared rays. The Nephilim, too, were aware that rocket ships or spacecraft entered a zone of confusion once they passed Earth and neared Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. Separated from the four by an assumed celestial bar, the seven were in a celestial zone for which the Sumerians used the term Ub. The Ub consisted of seven parts called in Akkadian Giparu, or night residences. There is little doubt that this was the origin of the Near Eastern beliefs in the seven heavens. The seven orbs, or spheres, of the Ub comprised in the Akkadian Kish Shatu, or the entirety. The term's origin was the Sumerian Shu, which also implied that part which that part which was the most important, the supreme. The seven planets were therefore sometimes called the seven shiny ones. Shu Nu, or the seven who in the supreme part rest. The seven were treated in greater technical detail than the four. The Sumerian, Babylonian, and Assyrian celestial lists described them with various epithets and listed them in their correct order. Most scholars, assuming that the ancient texts could not possibly have dealt with planets beyond Saturn, have found it difficult to identify correctly the planets described in the text, but our own findings make identification and understanding of the names' meanings relatively easy. First to be encountered by the Nephilim approaching the solar system was Pluto. The Mesopotamian list named this planet Shu Pa, or supervisor of the Shu. the planet that guards the approach to the supreme part of the solar system. As we shall see, the Nephilim could land on Earth only if their spaceship were launched from the 12th planet well before reaching Earth's vicinity. They could thus have crossed the orbit of Pluto not only as inhabitants of the 12th planet but also as astronauts in a moving spaceship. An astronomical text said that the planet Shupa was the one where the deity Enlil fixed the destiny for the land, where the god in charge of a spacecraft set the right course for the planet Earth and the land of Sumer. Next to Shupa was Eru, or Loop, at Neptune. The spacecraft of the Nephilim probably commenced its wide curve or loop towards its final target. Another list named the planet Humba, which connotes swampland vegetation. When we probe Neptune someday, we will discover that its persistent association with waters is due to the watery swamps the Nephilim saw upon it. Uranus was called Kakab, sorry, I pronounced that wrong, Kakab Shanama, which is the planet which is the double. Uranus is truly the twin of Neptune in size and appearance. A Sumerian list calls it Intimash Sig, or planet of bright greenish life. Is Uranus too a planet on which swampy vegetation abounded? Beyond Uranus looms Saturn, a giant planet nearly 10 times Earth's size, distinguished by its rings, which extend more than twice as far out as the planet's diameter. Armed with a tremendous gravitational pull and the mysterious rings, Saturn must have posed many dangers to the Nephilim and their spacecraft. This may well explain why they called the fourth planet Targalu, or the Great Destroyer. The planet was also called Kaksidi, or Weapon of the Righteousness, and Simutu, he who for justice kills. Throughout the ancient Near East, the planet represented the punisher of the unjust. Were these names expressions of fear or references to actual space accidents? The Akitu rituals we have seen made reference to storms of the waters between An and Ki on the fourth day, when the spacecraft was between Anshar, which is Saturn, and Kishar, which was Jupiter. A very early Sumerian text, assumed since its first publication in 1912 to be an ancient magical text, very possibly records the loss of a spaceship and its 50 occupants. It relates how Marduk, arriving at Eridu, rushed to his father Ea with some terrible news. It has been created like a weapon. It has charged forward like death. The Anunnaki, who are 50, it was smitten. The flying bird like Shushar, it has smitten on the breast. The text does not identify it whatsoever destroyed the Shushar, the flying supreme chaser, and its 50 astronauts, but fear of celestial danger was evident only in regard to Saturn. The Nephilim must have passed by Saturn and come in view of Jupiter with a great sense of relief. They called the fifth planet Barbaru, or the Bright One, as well as Sagmegar, or the Great One, where the space suits are fastened. Excuse me. Another name for Jupiter, Sibziana, or true guide in the heavens, also described its probable role in the journey to Earth. It was the signal for curving into the difficult passage between Jupiter and Mars, and the entry into the dangerous zone of the asteroid belt. From the epithets, it would seem that it was at this point that the Nephilim put on their MEs, their spacesuits. Mars appropriately was called Utukagaba, or light established at the gate of waters, reminding us of the Sumerian and biblical descriptions of the asteroid belt as the celestial bracelet separating the upper waters from the lower waters of the solar system. More precisely, Mars was referred to as Shelibu, or one near the center of the solar system. An unusual drawing on a cylinder seal suggests that passing Mars, an incoming spacecraft of the Nephilim, established constant communication with mission control on Earth in figures 121 right below. So here's our little spacecraft right here, right here at top with the wings, the two rods for antennas and everything. Here's what they're trying to depict, what Sitchin is saying, communications to and from people on Earth here. I'm gonna let that there for you guys for a bit, because we're gonna go ahead and stop on the next page. Okay. The central object in this ancient drawing simulates the symbol of the 12th planet, the winged globe. Yet it looks different. It is more mechanical, more manufactured than natural. Its wings looked almost exactly like the solar panels with which American spacecraft are provided to convert the sun's energy to electricity. The two antennas cannot be mistaken. The circular craft, with, with its crown like top and extended wings and antennas, is located in the heavens between Mars, which is the six pointed star, and Earth and its moon. On Earth, a deity extends his hand in greeting to an astronaut still out in the heavens near, near Mars. The astronaut is shown wearing a helmet with a visor and a breastplate. The lower part of his suit is like that of a fishman, a, a requirement perhaps in case of an emergency splashdown in the ocean. In one hand he holds an instrument, the other hand reciprocates the greeting from Earth. And then, cruising on, there was Earth, the seventh planet. In the list of the seven celestial gods, it was called Shugi. Oh my. I didn't catch the last page for you guys. I'm so sorry about that. I'll continue reading on. It also meant the land at the conclusion of Shu, of the supreme part of the solar system, the destination of the long space journey. While in the ancient Near East, the sound gi was sometimes transformed into the more familiar ki, or earth dry land. The pronunciation and syllable gi have endured into our own times in their original meaning, exactly as the Nephilim meant it to be: geography, geometry, geology. In the earliest form of pictographic writing, the sign Shugi also meant Shibu, or the seventh, and the astronomical text explained Shar Shadi Il Enlil Ana Kakab Shugi Ikabi, which translates Lord of Mountains, deity Enlil with planet Shugi is identical. Paralleling the seven stations of Marduk's journey, the planets' names also bespeak a space flight. The land at the journey's end was the seventh planet, Earth. And we'll go ahead and stop there since I pre marked it out, but I didn't take the darn picture. But on the next update, for everyone who's trying to follow along here, it will be on the next update, which will be part 3 of this chapter. And lightly glancing at it, we'll be finishing that up to this chapter on the next update. With that being said, I want to wish everyone a safe day, night, morning, like I said, wherever you are hearing this. And I appreciate every single one of you. And that does it for me, everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe. Remain calm. Love you all.